Hey, good evening. It's Monday, April 24th. And thanks so much for being here on Everyday Talk 24/7 as we start a new week together. I'm going to continue this topic of self-talk. I think it's really important and productive for us to understand this battle that's going on within us. Tonight we're going to talk about anger. And self-talk is huge from that. And again, just to back up for a minute, your question, the battle that we all face, in our self-talk, what's going to prevail? The voice of our flesh or the voice of the Spirit through His Word? What are we talking about? Who are we siding with in our talk? Are we siding with the flesh, or are we going to side and align ourselves with the truth of God's Word? Anger is an emotional response that flows from a sense of injustice that someone, or perhaps yourself, has experienced, that someone has been wronged in some way. And we kind of ramp up our feelings depending upon the severity of how we've been wronged or whatever we perceive the injustice to be. And we can get pretty agitated, boiling, angry, mad. Righteous anger, which is what we like to say that we have, but proper righteous anger is when God's character has been attacked or His law has been broken, and either God or the law have been dishonored in some grievous way. Righteous anger results in peace because you're going to solve this problem based upon God's truth, God's way. So when we're involved in righteous anger, the result is peace. And that's in 2 Corinthians 10, verses 3-5, where Paul encourages us not to fight with the weapons of the flesh, but to fight with the powerful weapons of the Spirit. Righteous anger will not leave you in turmoil. Righteous anger will leave you at peace because you're doing things the way that God says to do them. Human anger, however, the anger that you and I have, will not result in the righteous life that God desires, as James 1:20 says. It will not bring peace. When you are so agitated, when you are so angry, when you are so frustrated, when you can't stand just the horrific, stupid, awful behavior of someone else, maybe even someone close to you, that is not righteous anger. That's handling it your own way. And the results are not pretty, as you well know. God tells us about human anger, we are to get rid of it. Throw it away. Don't give in to those things. I'm not going to go into it tonight, but Ephesians 4:30-32 tells us to do rid of it, rid ourselves of anger, rage, malice. That is not righteous anger. It will not bring about God's life. Remember, there is a war going on in your heart and your mind between the flesh, the remnants of the sinful nature, and the Spirit of God. We've talked about this, but we need to be aware of this war. We can't forget it because it's raging all the time. This is what Galatians chapter 5 teaches us. Let me read that. We talked about it last week when we talked about the battle for the mind. Verses 16 and 17 of Galatians 5. So I say, this is Paul, so I say, walk by the Spirit, live by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of your flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. See, there's that tension. And then Paul says, they are in conflict with each other. You and I live with the sense of internal conflict all the time. What are we going to give into? Or what are we going to live for? If I give in to the ways of the flesh, then that conflict will reach out to me. And it won't be pretty. But if I'm going to live by the way of the Spirit, follow the truth of His word, then I'll know peace. But we can't forget about this conflict. Now, I'm going to give us some real practical examples about how we can identify which self-talk is going on and what we can trust. And it's in a very familiar passage in 1 Corinthians 13, but let's apply it to self-talk. And this is verse 13, 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 to 7. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. Love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. When we are angry, we're not loving. We're not walking with the Spirit. We're not in step with Him. Your anger, my anger, that's the voice of the flesh. That's the self-talk of the flesh telling us we have to get after this person. We have to right this wrong. We can't let this go. See, we're trying to do God's job, and we frankly do a rotten job of trying to do God's job. Your anger will focus on seeking justice and retribution, getting what's yours. And it brings no peace, and all it does is leave a wreckage, a relational wreckage strewn across the landscape of your life. The voice of the flesh, looking back at this passage in 1 Corinthians 13, the voice of the flesh, it's about envy. They shouldn't be having that. It's proud. You can't do this to me. I don't deserve that. I'm better than that. It seeks our own good. Same kind of thinking. I'm going to lose out here. No one's going to do that to me. This anger, it's easily triggered. Boom, we're right there. I can't believe you did that. And it just springs forth because we're listening to the self-talk of anger, of the flesh. Not righteous anger, but human anger. And then this voice of the flesh, this self-talk, will keep reminding us, it keeps a detailed record of the wrongs that everyone else has done, especially someone close to you. It keeps this detailed record, and then it keeps on replaying over and over and over and over again till it leaves you in a state of just violent anger. That's the voice of the flesh, controlling your self-talk and producing exactly the spirit of bitterness and anger that the enemy wants. In contrast, the voice of the Spirit results in self-talk that brings patience. Patience is living in the expectation of God's care. It's not envious. It's not proud. It's not arrogant. It's not demanding its own way. This voice of love coming from the Spirit produces self-talk that considers others more important than you are. When you're angry, the last thing from your mind is considering someone to be more important than you. Rather, it's the other way around. How can they do this to me? The voice of the Spirit is self-talk that is slow to anger, not easily triggered. It doesn't say never be angry. There's a place for anger. But it's slow to anger. It's a measured anger. And it's anger that's going to bring honor to God and not retribution and vengeance for me. This kind of anger that's right, the slow to anger, means that I can respond with the soft, gentle answer, with the soft, gentle voice of the Spirit, the truth of the Spirit. Remember Proverbs 15. A gentle answer turns away wrath. A soft answer moves it away, pushes it away. And then this kind of self-talk from the truth of the Spirit It's not focused on all the wrongs that have been done to me, but on the faithfulness of God and how I can bring honor to Him and not bring honor to myself. And then lastly, in verse 7, this voice of love is not about letting them have it and getting even. This voice of love, the love of the Spirit, the self-talk of the Spirit, helping us so that our talk is in line with what the Spirit wants. It will always protect, always trust, always hope, always persevere. Before you think that this is weak or passive, it's not. This recognizes that God is far superior to administering justice than you and I are. God is far superior to administering justice than you and I are. See, when we try and take things in our own hands, when we listen to the voice of the flesh, and that becomes the dominant part of my self-talk, I'm all about getting it right. I'm all about anger. I'm all about justice. And I lose sight of the fact that God is the one who is the perfect one for the justice business. Leave room for the wrath of God. Romans 12, verses 17 to 21 tell us for this. Return good for evil. This isn't passive. This is power. Leave room for the wrath of God to do His job. Don't attempt to do God's job because, frankly, we stink at it. Self-talk, anger. Let that self-talk be flooded with the truth of God's Spirit that we see in 1 Corinthians 13, that we see in Galatians, that we see throughout the Scriptures. Don't try and do God's job. Be humble enough to let Him do what needs to be done. He always has our back. We can always trust Him. That's the place of peace. Don't be dominated by the self-talk that produces anger in you, that just destroys everything around you. Know the wonderful peace of His Spirit. And, we're going to keep talking on these issues of self-talk. But anyway, that's self-talk and anger. Thank you so much for being here. And again, love your thoughts, feedback, questions, anything that's not clear, just let me know. Thank you so much again. And Lord willing, we will see you tomorrow. Good night. Thank you so much for watching. It is such a huge encouragement.